Thanks again for tuning back into the channel. In this week's video, we're still going to be looking at flow and motion and continuing on from last week's video to show you another editing exercise in Photoshop to really lift your images. So without further ado, we'll dive right in. Okay, this is the image that we are going to be heading towards for this, and these three layers here, the adjustment layers, group 8 and group 10, they're my own personal choice for this. If I turn them off like so, that's the image that we are working towards. What you do beyond that is entirely up to you. I'm playing around with textures just now in my images, so that's why I added these three in. The first step for me was getting the aspect ratio that I wanted, and in this case I just used the crop tool to expand the canvas to a point that I was happy, and then continued to use generative AI to select some of the area, including some of the image, to give it something to work from, and then just generated, and that gave me different generations. Once I selected the generation I wanted to use, I just flattened it into the underlying layer. So each time you do a generative fill in Photoshop, it will provide a different result each time, meaning that each image that you do will be slightly different. So what I'm going to do is, I've got two of these open, so just to show you that each image is going to be different, what I'm going to do is delete these layers. So what I'm going to do now is turn all of them off, go back to this tab here, and drag this into this document. So there you go, that's the size of it. So it's now dragged into that document. I need it at the bottom because I don't want it to interfere with these three I've marked in red. So I'm just going to move that up to it roughly fits, and I'm also going to take it down a tiny bit just so that it fits in here as well. So I'm going to go Command and T and bring that to there. This document here suits my working size for the series of images I am working on. I still need to fill in this area. So again, we go through the generative fill. So that's it. So I'm quite happy with what we have now. I'm going to combine these two layers together. So just select the top layer, Command or Control and E. That's me, my composition's all set up. What do we do now? Well, basically what we can do now is, I like the flow of the hair and I like the flow of the dress over the shoulder and the flow back here. So now what I would do is Control and J. So again, I've still got two layers. But now I'm going to get into a different thing altogether. If I go into the blur gallery, there is a thing here called path blur. Now this is one of my favourite ones. So you can see exactly what that does. That's just caused a blur to go across there. But the good thing with the path blur, it allows you to draw the path of the actual blur that you want in the direction you want in any flow that you want. So I'm going to start with the hair. So that's the first one, and I'm just going to take that to there. So I'm going to follow this bit of hair here. Not perfectly, but so I'm going to take it up as if it's going in that direction. And then I am going to bend that slightly, and then if you go over the line and you see the plus sign appearing, you can put another pin in, and then I'm going to bend that down there. So you see the flow is now going this way. I also quite like the flow here, so I'm going to put a pin there, stretch it out, and this is just to give me enough space to do this. I am going to click twice and that puts an arrowhead in. If I didn't click, this happens and it follows it there. So I don't want that to do that. Now that this is out here, I can go, right, okay, I want that to come down and follow this bit of material. I'm sure by now you get the idea of this. But the good thing is with this one is it allows you to put in quite a few, whereas motion blur just follows one effect. So you can see already I've got that going up that way, this coming down this way. So from here, just keep repeating the process and following any lines or any curves that you want. We've got the speed of the blur. Now this is global, so it affects everyone. And you can see, look, we can push that out and we can bring it back in. So I'm going to look for a kind of decent speed here. And then we've got the taper of it. Now watch what happens to the taper of it when I do this. See it getting sharper. Depends where it is and depends what type of image. Now I quite like this sharpness here, and for this image this time I've had to go up to 24%. Now we can center the blur or turn it off. I normally, for these type of edits, I leave it in centered. And then we've got the speed endpoint, which I can take down to there, so as if it's starting from practically 0, in this case it is, or I can start with a slight movement in it as well, and you can see that I'm moving this slowly so that hopefully you can see it in the screen. So we've got quite a static, as near as we can to being a static start for this, for that end point. I'm going to leave it about there. I'm quite happy with that there. Then last but not least, we've got further control. We can get into the edit blur shapes. And on this one, I'll actually move it to this one so that you can, I'll move it to this one actually, so that you can see it. So this creates 2 extra arrows in here. And what I can do is I can grab these. But I've now got more control and I can move everything round about. So it just depends how finite you want to make your edits. Most of the time I don't have these on. So hopefully, just with that simple exercise there, you get to see that you can control your image. You can make movement in your image that wasn't possible before. Now, this has been in Photoshop for a few incarnations now, and it's really good for, say, for example, a static car shot that you want to make it as if it's moving. You would copy up the car onto a new layer and then do this in the background once you have a generative fill and remove the car from the base layer. But at least you can see in here how it actually works. Now I click OK, let Photoshop do its thing, and we get this effect. Now you'll notice that that is different from the original image that I showed you. But what we have now is we've got motion in this image, so we've made it like a type of motion blur. We want to bring some static imagery back into this. So because we did that on this layer, which I'll just rename for you as motion blur, what we do now is the original working layer, we take it above it, so you can see that there. And then we go down and we create a hide all mask, which is hold down Alt and click the mask button. And we'll get a hide all mask, so you can see it again there. It's a hide all mask, so to reveal any parts of the image we need to work in white. So you take a brush, you take the soft round brush, the very first one in the general brushes section, and you change it to white. Now that's why my opacity and my flow are set quite low, so that I can go in and gently paint in areas that I want to seem static within the image. Now, I normally would work with a slightly bigger brush, but I just want to show you this working, and possibly bring some effect into her shoulder. That's maybe a bit much there because it's too static within there. So just press X on your keyboard and watch what happens here. X. So if I sit and press X, it jumps between the foreground and background colours. I need to paint in black to get rid of that area there. So that's it. We've got our base layer and we've got our basic edit within this. For me to give the double exposure effect, what I would do is select the top layer, press Shift, Command, Alt and E, and that copies those 2 layers combined together into one layer. So if I turn them off, you see we're left with this image. I will, however, turn them back on. And for this layer here, I'm just going to press Command and T. I'm going to minimize it so that you can see. Command or Control and T. And I'm going to scale this up. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to go in and I'm going to take the screen blending mode for this so that I get that effect. And perhaps I'll make it even bigger. And just scale it up further. So we now have this here that I'm not so keen on, but it lets you see and show you how to remove this area in screen, and then that's us done. With that one selected, press the mask button and we've got a reveal all mask. So because we've got a reveal all mask, we need to hide areas. So soft round brush, hide in black. I'm still in the gentle opacity and flow, and all I'm going to do is paint some of this back out. And there we have the images. Now for me, just to show you the technique here, I add more texture layers into this just to get the effect that I'm after. So these are built up, these are already in here, adjustment layers. You can see it gets brighter in there. What these contain, for example, is I've got a hue saturation layer here. If I turn that off, you'll see what it does. I've also got a brightness and contrast layer, which, as you can see, that's why it's turned off for this image. And I've also got a curves layer. So what layers, adjustment layers you add is entirely up to you. Within my texture layers, I've got quite a few textures in here that I like to add. And perhaps that is too much for the image. So because it's already in the template, I can go in and I can remove certain layers all the way through this to get to the point that I quite like the final effect of the image. And because these are here, what I can also do within them is if I leave that one on and I quite like it, but I would rather that didn't look so bright, I can click the layer and press Control or Command and I and invert it. It just depends what you're after with your final image. I could add that one in, click that, Control, Command, invert, and I get that effect. Now it's entirely up to you what you do with these. You can also go in, that's a normal blend mode. I can go in and darken it, multiply, and get to whatever creative end result that I want for my imagery. Hopefully you get something from that, and hopefully it lets you see just a couple of the techniques that can be used to your advantage for your images. Thanks again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.